Welcome to the Parties channel. Today, we explain Genesis chapter 6 in a clear and simple way, step by step. So, we're going to dive right into the original Hebrew words here, and we'll be relying purely on their plain, straightforward meaning, what we call the pashhat. We really want to understand the core of this pivotal historical narrative. This chapter contains absolutely one of the most dramatic shifts in all of human history. Literally, we go from a booming, rapidly multiplying human population straight to a world teetering on the absolute brink of total destruction. And then finally, it sets up this incredible story of survival. We're not skipping any verses today. We're going to walk through exactly who is involved, what actually happens, where the story takes its massive turns, and deeply look at why God makes the decisions he does. So let's get ready to unpack this fascinating chapter together.
Okay, here's our quick roadmap for the chapter. First up, the state of humanity. Second, divine grief and judgment. Third, Noah finds favor. Fourth, corruption and the decree. And finally, the ark and the covenant. Let's just jump right in.
All right, part 1, the state of humanity. We're looking at the multiplication of mankind and the Nephilim.
So to set the scene, generations have passed since the original creation, right? And we're seeing a literal population boom. The text opens up by telling us that men began to increase in number on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them. But as you'll see, with this rapid physical growth comes a major societal shift. The text says the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they just married any they chose. Basically, we're seeing a time of entirely superficial pursuits. Powerful people taking whatever they wanted, and the human family becoming incredibly complex and entangled in a really unhealthy way. Now, out of this whole situation comes the introduction of the Nephilim. And keeping it to the plain text, they are described simply as the heroes of old, the mighty men of renown. Think of them as the famous, powerful figures, the warlords who were absolutely dominating the landscape back then. But, and this is a huge but, as we quickly learn in this chapter, having physical might and earthly fame absolutely does not equal moral goodness in the eyes of the Creator. Striving for fame and renown, well, that's a human pursuit. God, as we're about to see, is looking for something entirely different. Following this description of where society's at, God steps in and makes a definitive, incredibly sobering ruling. He actually declares, "My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal." Because of the terrible direction humanity is heading, God sets a firm boundary. He dictates that the days of mortals will from now on be limited to 120 years. Think about what a massive shift that is. If you look back at the earlier generations in Genesis, people were living for centuries, 6, 7, 800 years. But here, God actively limits the human lifespan. It's a direct response to the trajectory of mankind. He's putting a divine boundary on human life and human ambition.
Moving on to part 2, divine grief and judgment. This is really the turning point for the earth.
While humanity was probably super impressed by all these mighty men of renown walking around, the Creator saw something completely different. The wickedness of mankind was absolute. And I want you to notice the specific language used here because it's intense. Every inclination, only evil, all the time. This wasn't just a few mistakes here and there. The text is telling us that the very imagination of the human heart was continually corrupted. The internal moral compass of humanity wasn't just off, it was entirely broken.
Because of this overwhelming, constant evil, we get this really profound look into God's emotions. The narrative tells us the Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. It repented him. Out of this deep divine grief, God issues a sweeping, completely catastrophic decree. He says, "I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the earth." And it doesn't even stop with humans. The decree includes the beasts, the creeping things along the ground, and the birds of the air. The corruption of humanity was just so absolute, it brought a sentence of unmaking upon the entire created order of the earth.
Okay, part 3, Noah finds favor. A little glimmer of hope in a really dark text.
Just when it seems like literally all is lost, verse 8 introduces this profound pivot. On one side of the scale, we have an earth entirely corrupt before God, deeply wicked and filled with violence. But on the other side, we have Noah. The text says he found grace or favor in the eyes of the Lord. Why? Because he was a righteous man, he was blameless among his peers, and he walked with God. While the whole world was going one way, Noah flat out refused to conform to the violent culture around him. He's the sole exception. The narrative actually pauses right here specifically to introduce Noah's lineage, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Now, while that might just seem like a basic genealogical detail, it is absolutely critical. Because Noah found favor, his family literally becomes the narrow bridge through which humanity is going to survive. These three sons are going to play a vital role in the events to come. They represent the entire future of mankind after this impending judgment.
This brings us to part 4, corruption and the decree. The final verdict.
Up until now, we've kind of just been given insight into God's internal thoughts and feelings, right? But now God initiates a direct conversation with Noah. He explicitly tells him that the end of all flesh has come before him. And again, why? Because the earth was corrupt and filled with violence. Applying just the plain meaning to these words, we see humanity had fundamentally ruined their way of life. The violence was so pervasive, so everywhere, that the earth itself is described as ruined. God tells Noah, I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. The verdict is completely final. There's no going back. And right here, the exact mechanism of this divine judgment is finally revealed to Noah. God declares, I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish. It is a thorough, completely unavoidable reset of the world. Think about it. Water, the very element that was separated at the beginning of creation to allow dry land to even appear, is going to be unleashed to cover the earth once again. Finally, Part 5, the Ark and Covenant. God's specific instructions for survival. So, amidst this promise of total destruction, how does humanity survive? Well, God doesn't just declare the end. He establishes a covenant. That's a formal, binding agreement of protection. He dictates exactly who is going to be saved from the floodwaters within the ark. It's a very, very small passenger list. It's just Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. Out of the vast multitudes of humanity that we talked about multiplying on the earth earlier, only these 8 individuals are chosen to step into the future. Now, this covenant comes with enormous, almost unimaginable responsibility. God's survival instructions are incredibly specific. Noah is commanded to bring 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive. 2 of every kind of bird, animal, and creeping thing. And, as if building a massive ark and wrangling wild animals wasn't enough of a job, he's also tasked with gathering and storing away every single kind of food necessary to sustain all this life through the entire catastrophe. It is a massive undertaking. Genesis chapter 6 concludes with this resolute, simple statement of total obedience. Just think for a second about how staggering these instructions were. Noah was asked to build a massive structure, gather animals, stockpile an insane amount of food, and prepare for a flood of unprecedented scale, all while living in a deeply corrupt and violent society that absolutely must have mocked him. Yet, the text simply says, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. He didn't argue, he didn't try to negotiate. This right here is the ultimate practical life lesson for us. True faith is demonstrated through immediate, thorough obedience to God's word, regardless of how overwhelming the task is or how wicked the surrounding culture might be. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we're left pondering a really powerful final thought. Noah's society was entirely consumed by evil, yet he managed to walk with God and follow incredibly difficult instructions to the letter. It really challenges us to look at our own lives. How do we maintain our integrity, our blamelessness, and our obedience when the world around us completely loses its way? It takes a deliberate, wholehearted choice to walk with God every single day. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.